As a kid, I loved to draw. And my earliest memories of drawing were my grandparents, both sets lived in the Seattle area. My one grandmother lived over near SeaTac Midway, is the community between Seattle and Tacoma. And then my other grandparents lived in Harper, which is near Port Orchard, across the Sound. And I remember drawing boats and trees and things. Yeah, I don't know how old they would have been, probably 5 or 6, something like that. And I've always just said, I like making things. I worked as a carpenter in the early days and kind of finish carpentry, always did a lot of that. Made surfboards. When my wife and I met there's a Christian Conference Center over here, and in conjunction with that is Ecola Bible School, which is a 1-year program, and Carol and I met there. And shortly after that, when we graduated, I had an offer from a friend to join him in a gallery that's just a few doors down. He was making wire sculpture, and a good friend of his was a somewhat renowned artist from the Northwest named Joe Police. And Joe taught David Lewis to weld and encouraged him to, do that kind of stuff. And then David pulled me in under his wing and did quite a bit with him for a couple of years. And what happened, it was very interesting. I had painted some watercolor before that and other mediums through high school and a couple of community college starts. And I realized as I was working on a piece of sculpture one day that what I had done looked like a kind of a brush stroke, almost like a calligraphy brush stroke would, it kind of went like this. And I thought, that looks like just a big brush stroke. And the next thought I had was, why am I working in a medium that's not my passion? And so I didn't immediately drop everything and go paint, but it was kind of that moment where I look back and I think that was kind of a turning point. So that was 78, 79, somewhere in there. We built a home, our first home in 1979, and we finished it. We went, it's worth how much? And yeah, down in Tolovana. And we sold it and kind of did like a second honeymoon. We'd been married 2 years, something like that. And we shipped the Volkswagen Westphalia camper to Kauai in Hawaii. And I brought all my carpentry tools and a bunch of painting stuff, thinking we may want to stay. And we loved Hawaii. And we thought about it, but this is home. We're both from here. Our families are here. So we were there a couple months, and I spent a lot of time painting and really enjoyed it. It was just a wonderful, rich time. In fact, we're going back next week. Exactly.
Did you sit in the van already? Oh.
Yeah, really. Boy, I would love to have that van back. It was really nice. Yes, it was a Volkswagen Westphalia camper, so it had, a stove and a refrigerator. Just really beautiful, beautiful. We had a great time. Pre-kids and yeah, come on in, you guys. There's plenty of room. Thank you all for being here. I know some of you were here last night. Thanks for coming back. And I said this, but I'm going to say it again. I really appreciate the fact that people care about what I do. I am so grateful that between Beth and Carol and our daughter-in-law, Kristen, and Nate, our son, who has the frame shop, it's a real family team that work well together, especially when the artist doesn't get his work done until the very last minute. And that's what happened this year for circumstances that were it is what it is. It wasn't any big deal, but it definitely kind of made everything come together at the tail end. And so what I'm going to unveil are 3 Giclée prints. They're all brand new. There's a little bit of advertising on some of them, so it may be familiar when you see it, but they are new. And this first one is so new that all I have is a print. It's not matted, it's not framed, it's just thumbtacked to the wall here. So let me show you that one first. And the other thing that we opted to do this year, because it was kind of such a last minute thing to pull the pieces together. Normally we frame a lot of choices so people have a lot to pick from when we do these unveilings, but I have some, but like with this one, it's not framed yet, so it would just have to be something we would work on if you're interested. But we've also opted to do the smaller sizes of them, because bigger prints, which the originals for these 2 are this big, they're just a lot of work to frame. So that's the explanation of that. So this is called From East to West. These are the first cherry blossoms that bloom. And I always so appreciate the color that comes after a long gray winter. And the white, this is Mount Fuji is the species, is that the right way to say it? A tree. And the white ones, in fact, it was interesting. I didn't realize till this year, the white ones are very, very much the first ones. And then the pink come along maybe a couple, 3 weeks or a month later. So right now there's a lot of the pink ones in bloom, and it's raining cherry blossoms everywhere, which is remarkably beautiful. But anyway, for some reason, the white ones just really caught my eye this year. And so that's called From East to West, and that's the smaller size print. So if you're interested, let me know. We'll talk some more. This next one is called Sea Foam, and let me give you a little story quick before I drop the curtain on that. I love to walk on the beach in the mornings. It's kind of a real special time. Michael, Yami? Especially, I walk by your house every day. It's a special time for me. It's just, Carol and I usually wake up early, and we have coffee, and we visit. We talk about yesterday, we talk about today, and we often go our separate ways and do a walk of some sort. And I love going to the beach, and I love the solitude that's there. It gives me a chance to kind of put my day in order. It gives me a chance I'm a man of faith, so it's an opportunity for me to just say, I want your help, Lord. So it's really neat how that works out so regularly. And anyway, this is from one of those walks where I was walking along and I thought, that just looks like it should be painted. So Sea Foam is the title of this. Normally I walk from the other side of this point down past Cammy and Michael's house on Arcadia Beach, but this day I walked the other way, and when I turned around, the foam had, the waves push that foam in, and when it's still, the wet sand reflects just like a mirror, and that foam will kind of just drift in, and then the wave will back out and it'll leave the foam. It's just a really coastal sort of thing that's dear to my heart. And then this next one is an original. The original for this is bigger, like I was saying. I started it in September for the Earth and Ocean Art Festival, which is something we've done several times. And just interesting, I was telling people last night too, I've done somewhere north of 75 of these sorts of unveilings or demonstrations or art events. So makes me old. But they're really fun. They're a lot of work, and we work hard to get it all pulled together. but it really is a valuable thing for us, and I know people enjoy it. So I started this original in September with this in mind, but didn't finish it in 3 days of demonstrating. It went back to my studio and languished there for a few months, and finally I looked at it and I thought, you know what, I need to finish that. And so that's the backstory, and this one is called Still Hanging Out. These crab floats, as they're known, are attached to the crab pot, which is a big ring in most cases that the crabbers bait with something that the crab would be interested in. They'd throw it over the side of the boat, and these floats float on the surface so they can locate the pot. And they drive by in their boat and they hook it. You guys have probably all seen the Deadliest Catch. It's basically the Dungeness version of that. And they haul that pot back up and they pick through it, and they save the keepers, which are the males and the ones bigger than a certain size. And the rest go overboard, and they bait it and throw it back in and on to the next one. And the storms come along and they break those buoys off. And eventually they end up on the beach where we collect them and bring them home. And yes, I probably have brought home 250 of them, something like that, over the years. There's a whole bunch of my floats hanging in the driftwood tree over here. There's a whole bunch at the Bills in their back patio area. And there's a whole bunch down at Warren House. And all those are floats that I dragged. Yes, that's right. Yeah, we have actually given away quite a few too, just because, how many do you need? I just need a half a dozen to paint from, subject matter.
So does that mean there are crab pots in the bottom out there?
Yes. Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah. Occasionally they get washed in too, but usually it's just the remnant. Sometimes there'll be 3 or 4 of them attached together. Sometimes there'll be a rope that's 50 feet long, so it parted way deep in the water. I have a few of them too that have been compressed, and this is just my theory. I think they were in such deep water that the pressure shrunk them. They look shriveled. What is it a potato that you can carve and then they dry out and they get all wrinkly? They look kind of like that. But when they surfaced, apparently they didn't reconstitute and expand back out. So those are kind of the special ones. Come here. Any questions at all? Actually, that whole thing is composed. I had, it was, when I brought it in September and started it, I had some photographs from another painting I had done, actually 3 or 4 paintings. And in Photoshop, I selected the limbs and I dragged it into a sunset, and I selected the floats from another painting and I sized them and I dragged them in. And it was like a sketch at that point. And what I did then when I got to the point where the floats were a part of the painting at that point, putting them in, I actually had some crab floats that I brought into my studio, and I kind of lit them the same way and used them as subject matter. Yeah. Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you for coming by. Appreciate it.
The phone raised just and haptic and looking at it, trying to determine the technique of painting. Is that something like that?
No, in this case, it's some gouache, which is opaque watercolor. And most of my watercolors are painted with transparent watercolor, which means what it says. It's the pigments are very thin, and the light actually travels through the pigment, bounces off the paper behind, and it's small and somewhat imperceivable, but it does make a difference in the way the painting feels. So I use very little white, but I do occasionally, and this is a good example of it. It just, in the end, the painting works better if I use wash. These waves, the sun and the waves were lifted out. What I do is I paint the background color, the lighter hues, and I have, usually what I do is before I start painting, I will twist some tissue, and it's about the size of like a Sharpie pen, or about the size of my little finger. And it has a little bit of texture because it's twisted. And so I paint on that light wash, it's called, and then I hold that over the wet paper, and it pulls the paint off. And so I have white paper, but the edges are soft and they just feel a lot less man-made than if I paint on. There's a product that watercolorists use called Frisket or Mascoid, maybe something like it. Anyway, it's like a rubber cement, and you paint that where you want white, and you paint the rest of the painting, and then you peel that off. I don't like to use that because, for a couple reasons, it creates a halo around it of dark, because kind of that wicking action, it bumps up against the edge of that pigment, and it's because there's more paint there, then it dries dark. The other thing is I have to put the white there because I've established that. And I like the flexibility of being able to say, well, I actually want a little piece of this wave over here as well. And what if I just got it in the wrong place? So it gives me, a lot better chance of getting it to